Welcome to Bishop Fox Live from DEF CON 30. I'm Joe Seckman, AVP of R&D.
And I'm Tom Eston, AVP of Consulting, also at Bishop Fox, and I'm here to introduce our next guest on the live stream. And so I'm pleased to have Matt Scheurer he's the host of the ThreatReel podcast joining us today. Welcome.
Great, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and my podcast has been in the dustbin for a little bit, but we're hoping to pull
Bring
that
it back,
out.
man.
Brush the dust off of that, and get up and running here again soon. I do have a day job where I do digital forensics and incident response in a large enterprise environment. I have a gag order, though, not to talk about where I work, but I can talk a little bit about the things I do. That's no problem.
Awesome. So how did you get into digital forensics? What's your background?
So I had a previous job where I was very much a jack of all trades security engineer and wore a lot of different hats. It was great exposure to a lot of different things. And, you know, for one moment I might be pushing out next generation firewall rules. And then in another moment I'm doing digital forensics and incident response, investigating security alerts and triaging those. And then the next minute, I'm answering questions for auditors, which was probably one of the least favorite things I ever had to do.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it was if it needed done, pretty much had to do it. And so what was interesting for me was just sort of doing incident response and having that opportunity. And so maybe it was about 5% of my job there, and it was my favorite 5%.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes that's all it takes is, that exposure to, get you to what you want to do in your career. That's awesome. So, and how long have you been doing digital forensics now?
So I've been focused on that probably for a little bit under 2.5 years.
Okay, very cool. And you had a talk at the Blue Team Village that just took place, right?
Yes, I did. Actually, in my Blue Team Village talk here at DEF CON 30 was titled Lend Me Your IRs. And as you might imagine, it was about incident response. And unfortunately, the Twitch channel kind of had some issues, some technical issues, about 2/3 of the way into streaming my talk. However, anybody who wants to go out on YouTube and pull up the Blue Team Village, the video from that talk will be uploaded there and is accessible. And in the title slide as well is a link to the slide deck. So anybody that's interested in finding that, it'll redirect out to my GitHub, and
awesome.
They can download that slide deck. But that particular talk, it really, from my previous employer, covers my 3 favorite security investigations.
Ooh.
And the first one that was memorable was because TrustWave had done an amazing job of highlighting a attack that was targeting financial institutions, and the payload were actually macros in a Microsoft Publisher file, which is very unusual.
Wow, that is strange.
Certainly you expect to see malware targeting banks, right? And you expect to see those kinds of things in Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, probably very predominantly, and maybe even to an extent Adobe files. But in this case, it was Microsoft Publisher, which was highly unusual. So it made headlines, and then some other news organizations kind of picked that up and ran with it. And so one day I'm sitting at my desk frantically working away on probably 5 different things at once, multitasking as usual, and I have somebody come up to my desk and they're sort of freaking out and they're just very animated and, oh man, our admin assistant for the CEO just got hit with this thing. It was all over the news last week, and it matches these IOCs. I need you to dig in the attachment. When they first come up to me, I'm kind of like, oh yeah, I'll look into this thing. But the more they stood there and talked, the more amped up I started getting. Their bad anxiety and bad assumptions actually wore off on me. And so I finally get the attachment, and I'm tearing into this attachment. And long story short, I squandered an awful lot of time investigating this thing. At the very end, I thought, well, it could certainly be spoofed. So it could be a bit of a red herring, but I just didn't look at the EXIF data. So I look at the EXIF data, and lo and behold, the author of the file turned out to be our test phishing vendor.
Oh.
Now you can't take that at face value, right? So I look at the message headers, I pull the actual, and then I look, And yeah, it came from them all right. And for me, the tragic thing is I'd given a talk in the past called Phishing Forensics. Is it just suspicious or is it malicious? And I would drill into people, always start with the email message headers. That would have been good advice for me to follow from me, but painful lesson learned, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah? Wow. That's cool. So, and do you have any other upcoming talks as well? I think there's a couple other things you got in the hopper, right?
Yeah, I do. I'm going to have to cheat a little bit and look because my memory just isn't that good at the moment to recall it. So let me cheat here a little bit. Circle City Con 9 in Indianapolis, Indiana is coming up in September. I am actually giving a Wireshark workshop.
Oh, awesome.
It's about a 2-hour workshop, and it's really geared for folks that are newer to Wireshark, or basically introduction up to intermediate level. Anybody that's a little bit rusty, I think, would get a good benefit from that. And so, for those who don't know, usually the workshops at Circle CityCon are free or very nominal, low, $5-10 cost, something like that. So I'm looking forward to hosting that. I've got some other surprises for people who show up to the room a little bit early. So
very cool.
If you're at Circle CityCon, come check it out. It's going to be some fun stuff that people don't normally see. I'm also speaking at the 2022 Cybersecurity Midwest Summit in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'll be doing a panel talk there with a bunch of other folks, and that'll be on September 29th. So anybody that's going to be around Cincinnati, then check it out. I was accepted as a backup speaker to GERCON in Grand Rapids.
Oh, yeah. Great con.
And right there in mid-October. And I'm hoping that I actually get a chance to get up on stage and so forth. If I'm going to go there talking about being a superstar, I'm going to dress the part.
Yeah, you have to, of course.
And I've maybe been known to throw some black hats out into the audience.
Oh, really?
So, so
very cool.
Some good incentive for folks to get there and check that out. And then late October, the 26th through 28th, is the Information Security Summit in Cleveland, Ohio.
I will be there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And so, I will be participating right now in the morning show with Rob there. So.
Cool. I know Rob.
Oh,
very
do you?
well.
Okay,
oh, yeah.
very good. Yeah. So
I'm from Cleveland, so yeah.
Really? Okay, so I'm from Mansfield, Ohio originally.
Oh, no kidding.
Which is 70, for those who don't know, 70 miles between Cleveland and Columbus, right in the middle. So very close to
small
where you're
world.
from.
Yeah.
Indeed, very small world.
Awesome. Love seeing more people from Ohio.
Excellent.
So Matt, one thing I'd seen, you had done a talk on, or maybe a class on regular expressions. And I'm kind of a sucker for regular expressions, but I've heard this term, like if you're using regular expressions, you're doing it wrong. Have you ever heard that? And where do you think that came from?
I've honestly never heard that before. I think probably the most funny thing I've ever seen with regular expressions are people were doing mock-up book covers from, the idea is it was meant to look like an O'Reilly book when it was O' really. Yeah. And so somebody had one that was like regular expressions, putting dots and slashes until a thing happens or something like that. It made me laugh hysterically. It was a talk I gave probably most notably at DerbyCon 7 back in the day. And it was one of those things where a lot of people struggled with it, and I just wanted to kind of put some basic information out there. I thought it was a underrepresented topic at security conferences. Now, the challenge is regular expressions is a very dry topic. So my thought is, how do I make this fun for anybody? And what I ended up doing is I made an avatar of my mom, and I put these little voice clouds in. And if you didn't know what regular expressions were, if average person on the street, they might think, oh, you mean old sayings? Because nobody knows more old sayings than my mom. And I can cite you a specific example. So I had this voice cloud with my mom, and it was on the Let's Begin slide, and the voice cloud says, this is going to hurt me a lot more than it hurts you. And as she would tell me this, she's standing there with a yardstick, and I've got the sore behind. I'm crying my eyes out. So I'm not sure how true that really was, but I sprinkled a healthy dose of motherly advice throughout that talk, and people seemed to really enjoy it.
Yeah.
I also printed out a regex cheat sheet and handed out for that talk as well for folks.
Yeah, I literally have heard that a couple times, and I'm like, why? I don't understand. They're so powerful. It does take a commitment to learn. It's not the easiest
thing.
There's
a learning curve there. Yeah.
There's a learning curve, but mastering regular expressions, not to steal from the actual title from the book, is a superpower, I think. It's just fantastic. So and to sprinkle in the humor aspect of it, I think is great too.
Well, thank you.
Definitely dry.
So I know one thing we want to talk to you about was what's the biggest challenges with phishing forensics? I think is an interesting topic in itself.
Yeah, and so some things have changed since I first gave that talk. And for me, I think some of the hardest things are, back when I put that talk together, we didn't really have cloud mail services used by enterprises so much. And so we've seen a whole lot more issues with, for example, people being able to do thread hijacking. They're able to compromise accounts because the mail services are accessible from anywhere with an internet connection. And the other thing that happens is if somebody's sending messages through Microsoft email services or Google, you really only can tell where the messages originated to that level. It becomes even harder to attribute things than they were before. And so you see that, and just because you can validate something came from Google,
right?
But you can't really tell where it originated. Microsoft, maybe I can geolocate it as far as the continent it likely came from, but I can't tell where it truly originated. And of course, you can't just call up a large company and say, "Hey, would you mind sharing your logs with me so I can tell where this happened from?" So I think we've seen bigger spikes in business email compromise, thread hijacking. It really boils down to impersonation, right? So you have impersonation of organizations, you have impersonation of your clients, you have impersonation of employees, and those are the things that become more prevalent. It's no longer just, hey, click this link, open this attachment, and so that's where things have really gotten complex, in my opinion.
Yeah. So what kind of advice would you give kind of newcomers into security and they want to get into digital forensics? Like what advice would you give them?
That's a great question, and I actually have a newer talk, and I'm hoping Gurkhan will be one that picks it up, and that particular talk is called Becoming an IR Superstar. I think I referenced that earlier, and really that was honestly, it was inspired by the organization I work for. I participated in interviewing an awful lot of candidates, and what we found were there were shocking lack in skills in some important areas. And the thing that sort of blew me away is that we had folks applying, and maybe incident response wasn't their core focus, but what they were doing is they were security engineers at big organizations we've all heard of. They had degrees, they had a laundry list of certifications, and you would think that if somebody's a certified hacking forensic investigator, for example, they would understand magic bytes, magic numbers, file headers, whatever you want to call them. And so if you're looking at a text editor or in the ASCII output of a hex editor, for example, if you see something like MZ, you would expect somebody that has that type of certification, that's an executable file, because file extensions, obviously, they can be renamed or they can be removed. And so you really have to be able to identify those files. And very similar with PK, if you see that in the first few bytes, that's generally a zip file, going back to the old PKware days.
Oh, wow.
And so, because generally when something isn't human readable, there's a few possibilities, and some of the more common ones are that it could be encoded, it could be encrypted, or it could just simply be compressed data, and you need to decompress it to do further analysis.
Nice. So where can our audience find out more about you and your talks and what you got coming up?
Great question. So for anybody that wants to keep up to date with where I'm speaking, the things I'm working on, you can follow my Twitter handle at C3RKAH, generally anything I'm participating in. I try to make sure I promote out there and let folks know. And always looking for more followers. I'd love to get to 1,337.
Yeah,
so
do
I
it.
can tell people
Hear that,
how
everyone?
elite I am.
Yep,
And,
find them on Twitter.
I would. I'm getting close. So,
Yeah.
hopefully, if anybody's
Get you
tuning
there.
in, hit me up there, and I would really appreciate a follow, and I'll try to do a follow back. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on the live stream, Matt. Really appreciate it. And good luck to you and all your talks and all your research.
Great. This has been fun. I want to thank Bishop Fox for having me. Thank you, everyone.
You're welcome. All right. Well, stay tuned. We've got some more guests coming on the Bishop Fox DEF CON live stream. So stay tuned.